Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Timothy Ong. I'm from Asia's smallest country, Brunei, in the heart of Southeast Asia. Brunei has had a remarkably easy journey from low income to high income. Unfortunately, for the rest of Asia, Brunei's journey requires two small conditions. Firstly, a small population. Secondly, lots of oil. And therefore, that experience has little relevance to the rest of Asia. I have the good fortune this morning to be in an eminent panel, including the authors of two great books on growth, which I have read, probably the only one or one of a few in this room, but which I would strongly recommend for all those who want to understand more about this subject. The first book is, of course, authored by Professor Dwight Perkins, called East Asian Development, just recently published. And the second is authored by Michael Spence, called The Next Convergence. I must say that this comment of mine was not prompted by either of the two panelists, but I make this point because it gives me the comfort on this eminent panel to keep my remarks brief and sparse, knowing well that any gaps will be filled by the other eminent panelists. The question we have before us today is the so-called middle income trap. How does a country that has been doing well for many years, moving rapidly from low to low middle income to upper middle income, then facing slowing growth rates, trapped between a loss of competitiveness with respect to other low-cost producers, and yet quite unable to compete with innovative high-income producers? How do these countries move to the next stage? And most of the discussions in Asia, perhaps except for Brunei, which is more concerned with how to escape from the oil trap, most discussions in Asia tend to focus on the growth prospects of China, Asia's biggest and arguably most important economy, and the high middle income economies of Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia. And this focus on China and the high middle income economies of Southeast Asia is entirely natural because in the years following the Second World War, the economic superstars of the global economy have mostly come from this part of the world. Michael Spence, in his book, The Next Convergence, lists 13 economies, and there are only 13 economies, that have grown by an average of 7% or more for 25 years or more. Only 13 economies. Of these 13 economies, 9 of them have come from Asia. And of these 9 economies, 5 have made a successful transition from middle income to high income. The question is, what about the rest? Now, before launching into a direct answer as to the prospects of specific economies and their prospects for moving from middle income to high income, I'm mindful of the Chinese saying that those with knowledge don't predict, and those who predict have no knowledge. So in place of a prediction, I will just make the observation that when you join these discussions on how to escape the middle income trap, how to move from middle income to high income, you will find the discussion tends to be about policy errors, sins of commission. Demographics enter the discussion, but much of the discussion tends to focus on the quality of political leadership. And you will find that opinions, scholarly as well as non-scholarly, but certainly opinions of people who matter, when they give opinions or assessments about a country's prospects for moving to the next stage, these assessments tend to be connected to their assessments as to the quality of political leadership in that country. And what do we mean by quality of political leadership? It tends to focus on 4 areas. Firstly, the leadership's ambition to move to the next stage. Secondly, the leadership's ability to adopt a multi-generational, a long-term multi-generational view on growth. Thirdly, the capacity to undertake sustained institutional development. And fourthly, the political will to manage restructuring, including dealing with bottlenecks. If one adopts this approach, one would generally give high marks to China's prospects. There is a great respect for the Chinese leadership, especially the new leadership's ability to resolve issues, to unplug bottlenecks, and to undertake sustained restructuring. Whether this will be the case or not remains to be seen, but confidence level is high presently. If you take this approach, you would probably be less optimistic about the prospects of the high middle income economies of Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia, because all 3 face challenges of leadership capacity to undertake the kind of restructuring that is required for an economy to move successfully from middle income to high income. Now, this is supposed to be a 5-minute intervention, so I will just make one concluding observation. The question posed for this panel is middle income trap or billion prosperous consumers. Now, this is a catchy, attractive way of formulating the key question. But in my view, this question is completely inadequate. It is inadequate for 2 reasons. Firstly, it doesn't take into account that the kind of growth that we have experienced in many parts of Asia has been accompanied by increasing disparity. So that for many prosperous economies in Asia, the key challenge is that for a lot of their peoples, the key challenge is how to move from low income to middle income. China's record in this respect is spectacular. It has the world's history's greatest record in terms of lifting hundreds of millions of people out of poverty. But even China itself is facing challenges of growing disparity, which places increasing pressures on leadership's ability to undertake rational economic decisions. But within the high middle income economies of Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Thailand, and Indonesia, this is a pressing challenge. In fact, I would go further to say that the current crisis in Thailand, which is one of the most successful middle income economies of the region, is primarily because for many Thais, the ascension from lower middle income to high middle income has meant very little. For many Thais, the challenge is not moving from middle income to becoming a high income country. The challenge is how do many of them move from poverty or low income to being members of the middle class. The second observation I would like to make is that we need to be concerned not just about growth, but the quality of growth and the implications of growth on environmental sustainability. In his book, Consumptionomics, which I'm sure some of you have read, the writer Chandranaya, who is Malaysian but based in Hong Kong, makes the point that if a rising Asian middle class were to replicate Western patterns of consumption, the impact on the environment would be catastrophic. To cite one of his many examples, he says that if per capita energy consumption in Asia was to approximate European standards, and bear in mind European standards are somewhat lower than American standards, energy consumption would be 8 to 9 times that of the United States today. This clearly poses serious challenges for sustainability. In conclusion, I would like to leave you with one thought. It seems to me that we need to ask the question, how do we move? How do we become a high-income country? And that, of course, is the key question before us today. But we also have to ask another question, which is, what does it mean to be a high-income country? We need to be concerned not just about the quantitative aspects of growth, which are important, but we need to also be concerned about the qualitative aspects of growth. Otherwise, we may very well find ourselves escaping one trap, only to find ourselves in another. Thank you.